Hey everyone, I am going to try to answer for you exactly what a Bitcoin prolonged bear market, meaning a down market, looks like or feels like over the next 12 months. And conversely, what a Bitcoin bull market feels like, and then the probabilities of each. I'll cut to the chase here and say I think the probability of a bull market is about 70%. The probability of a bear market that starts in the near future is about 30%. Or lower. I'd probably put the probability of a bull market, meaning an up market, optimistic market, up higher than 70%, and the probability of a bear market lower than 30%. But I'll just stick with 70-30 for now. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, let's go with the bear scenario first. Actually, let's go with the bull scenario first, because I don't want you to be all bummed out when I talk about the bear scenario. So in a bull scenario, what happens is we chill out here at about $105,000, a little up, a little down. We went down to $102,000 when Elon Musk and Donald Trump were spatting yesterday, but then it bounced right back to 105. Here we are at 105. So what a bull market looks like is eventually a catalyst hits. Something lights the bonfire, or the wildfire of demand. It could be a nation state, announcing that they're adopting Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. It could be a major company announcing that they have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It could be just the fact that everybody who wants to sell Bitcoin at $105,000, the Bitcoin that's available for sale at that price just sells out. And everybody who has held Bitcoin for forever and wanted to buy a new Tesla, although I financed mine, so I'm not causing price pressure. But there's people who have wanted to do things with Bitcoin that they've sat on for 10 or 15 years, and $100,000 was a magic number for a lot of them, and some of them are selling. So it could just be that the Bitcoin for sale in the low 100,000s just runs out, and then the price starts to climb. And I'm going to walk you through what that euphoria feels like. So the price starts to climb, and it goes up, and then it pulls back, and everybody's sort of freaked out. But then it seems to start climbing again, and then it climbs again. And pretty soon people are getting euphoric, and so everybody's talking about it. And we go from completely asleep at the switch right now, where nobody's paying attention to Bitcoin. Nobody's talking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not exciting because it's been hanging around $100,000 for so long that everybody's, gotten bored and moved on, to suddenly it's the buzz. It's on MSNBC. Everybody's talking about it, or CNBC, whatever the finance channel is. So suddenly everybody's talking about it, and it's just a big deal, and the price just climbs and climbs and climbs, and it hits something between 180, somewhere above $150,000 per coin, maybe up at $180,000 per coin, maybe $220,000 per coin. But it climbs up there between now and late October or early November. The reason I say late October and early November is because historically in the year after the 4-year halving cycle, which happens in presidential years, that's always been where the peak is. So in 2013, 2017, and 2021, the top of the bull market, which is the up market, was in late October or early November of the year following the presidential election. So 3 in a row, it could be 4 in a row. If it is, that all would take place over the next 5 months or so. And the price would top out at somewhere between $150,000 and $220,000, I'm guessing. But it's all euphoric, and the only way you can really screw that up is if you keep, your conviction only grows with price, and so you keep dumping more money, and the higher and higher it gets, till finally you dump the absolute most you can possibly afford in right at the very tippy top, which again, in the long term, as long as you can hold on to it for 3 or 4 years, it doesn't matter because it'll be up anyway. But a lot of people can't, and so then they invest at the tippy top, and then they capitulate at the bottom, which is the exact opposite of what you would normally want to do. So anyway, that's what the bull market feels like. It's euphoric, it's fun, everybody feels rich, everybody thinks they're a genius. And again, the only way to screw that up is to dump all your money in at the very tip top. And, the smart thing to do is, if you want to invest, let's say above 120,000 a coin, I recommend dollar cost averaging, which is just buying the exact same amount of Bitcoin every week for as long as you can do it. Maybe it's $100, maybe it's $1,000, maybe it's $10, but you just buy the same amount of Bitcoin every single week, and you just do that as long as possible. So in a bull market, obviously it makes sense to hold the Bitcoin right now, to hold it as long as conceivably possible. And basically, even if you need money in the near term, it even makes sense to keep that in the form of Bitcoin, because it's rising so fast that you're effectively just riding this massive wave of adoption and massive wave of demand, and it's really fun. And those don't happen very often. And Bitcoiners love that, because most of the gains in the market come during relatively short periods of time. So that's what the up market feels like. And obviously in an up market, everyone loves it. And it's fantastic. Unless people, sell their Bitcoin and then miss out, or unless they buy the Bitcoin only at peak euphoria and don't have the patience to just wait. As long as you can wait, it's fine. It'll be back up at those prices again. You just might have to wait a couple of years. All right, so what does a bear market feel like? A bear market sucks. Bear markets have followed the bull markets every time. Now, the bear markets end up bottoming out at much higher levels each time. So the very first sort of bear market, Bitcoin bottomed out at $2. And it rose up to $32, and then it went down to $2. And then the next, price cycle, it went up to $1,200 and bottomed at $92. $92. So again, it went from bottoming at $2 to bottoming at $92. Then it ran up to, $19,000 and bottomed at $3,200. Then it ran up to $69,000 and bottomed at $15,500. I know that's way too many numbers to keep in your head, so I'll give you just the bottom numbers. The lowest price it ever got was $2. And then the next cycle, the lowest it ever got was $92, which is 46 times as much. And then the next cycle, the lowest it got was $3,200, which is way more than $92. And the next time the lowest it got was $15,500, which again is way more than $3,200. And I anticipate that the lowest Bitcoin will go in the next big major price correction, which the biggest price correction we've had this year was 33%, which was down to about $75,000, down from 109, I think it was, from like 109 down to 75, whatever it was 33%. And the biggest price correction last year was from $74,000 down to $50,000 for like a very brief moment. So almost a 33% price correction as well. But a bear market, the price corrections can be bigger than that, especially if they come after a big bull market. So if the price runs up to let's use round numbers, $200,000 per coin, it absolutely could price correct very temporarily by 50% down to $100,000 a coin, which is lower than today's price, but it might only be there for a matter of hours or days. And if you're thinking, well, I'll just wait and buy it cheap later, well, the problem is nobody, especially you, has any idea how low that price bottom is going to be. Nobody knows, and because nobody knows, if you wait to buy Bitcoin in the next price downturn, not a soul on the planet can tell you when the price is going to bottom and what the bottom is. You just don't know. And there's no way to know. And for all you know, you're going to plan on buying it at $100,000 a coin in the next big price correction, and the lowest it'll ever go is 110. And you will have waited for years with no Bitcoin, waiting for a price that will never come. And that happens to a lot of people. It's a very common occurrence. With that being said, the bear markets suck. They typically last about 12 months to get from the peak to the trough. So if we start grinding down in the near term, and it sucks, and the price just, absolutely is the worst, and it's going down and all that sort of stuff. And what that looks like is you hit a peak. Maybe it's $112,000 from, last week or whenever it was, the week before last, I can't remember. Maybe it's 112 and we just grind down from here. If so, I don't think we're in for a massive mega correction, because we haven't had a massive mega bull market. And typically the price correction is a function of how high the run up was. So for example, if somebody said, hey, newsflash, Bitcoin's going to run up to $500,000 in the next 12 months, I would say, oh, well, you're going to get a massive mega price correction of like 70% after that, because an asset just can't go from $105,000 to $500,000 in 6 or 12 months without being followed by a massive price correction. That's just an asset as big as Bitcoin. You just can't, the world cannot adopt the technology that fast, which means the price is going to get ahead of itself, and then it's going to go through a correction where the price gets more, along the line of adoption. Ultimately, the Bitcoin price has to reflect adoption worldwide. Now, total adoption worldwide is like 3%, or at most 5%. It's a tiny percent of the world. But you just can't, in 12 months, you can't go from 5% of the world adopting a technology to 50% of the world adopting a technology. It just doesn't happen that fast. Humans are incapable of adopting technologies that fast, which means that the price goes up 5x in 5 months. You know that price is not tied to technological adoption because humans just cannot adopt technology that fast. Humans are risk averse. Humans are, people, that's just not the way people operate. So if you get a huge price run like that, you're going to get a correction because it's just, there's no possible way that that's sustainable at that level. But the price corrections historically have lasted about 12 months. So once the price starts grinding down, whether it's grinding down from 112,000 a week or two back, and we're stuck grinding down for the next 12 months, or whether it's grinding down from $200,000, 6 or 12 months from now, and then we grind down for an entire 12 months, who knows? Nobody knows. But that process is brutal. It's interspersed with, the price rising and everybody getting all hopeful that maybe the downturn is over, and then the price downturn continues and everybody gets all demoralized again. And the reason that you always hit a bottom and then start climbing again is because Bitcoin is amazing. It's an incredible technology that lets you transfer value and store value to anyone, anywhere in the world in seconds, instantly. It's just an amazing technology. And it is so valuable as an amazing technology that people want to buy it. And they will always want to buy it. And so just like in 2022, when the price ground down from November of 2021 to November of 2022, which was the last really big bear market, when the price was just grinding down, and then it would recover a little bit, then it would grind down some more. Everybody thought it had gotten as low as it could be. And then Terra Luna and Celsius and Voyager all blew up, and Three Arrows Capital blew up, and the price went down some more. And then everybody thought it had gotten as low as it could go. And then the price grinds down some more. And then FTX blows up. Sam Bankman-Fried turns out that he's scamming everybody. And so it blows up and the price even goes down more. And everybody's like, how on earth can bad things keep happening? How can the price just keep going down because stupid people are blowing companies up and somehow Bitcoin is in the blast radius? Even though none of it had anything to do with Bitcoin. It was all just bad business decisions and, stupid strategies and outright fraud in the case of, FTX and Celsius and a lot of others. It was just straight up fraud, Ponzi schemes and all sorts of crazy stuff people were running. None of it had anything to do with Bitcoin. Most of it was with, random stupid cryptos. And the stuff that did involve Bitcoin had nothing to do with Bitcoin itself. It had to do with people scamming customers that just happened to be using Bitcoin as the medium of the scam, but they could have just as easily been using something else. But anyway, those bear markets are brutal, and ultimately they end with the final capitulation, typically, of everybody who bought when the price was super high, finally capitulates when the price is super low, and they capitulate by selling their Bitcoin to people like me, who understand how valuable Bitcoin is. And if you understand how valuable Bitcoin is, then you are buying all the way down. So that's what I did. After Bitcoin peaked at $69,000, once it dropped into the $50,000, I bought some more Bitcoin because the Bitcoin I owned at that time was a relatively small amount that I had purchased in 2017 and 2018. And so once I saw Bitcoin rise to $69,000, I did not buy any more on the way up because it just kept getting more and more expensive. And I thought I just didn't have time to figure out what Bitcoin was doing and make sense of it all until later. And so I was not buying on the way up. I was basically holding the Bitcoin I had bought in 2017 and 2018. But when the price started coming down in 2022, I started buying more in the 50,000s. And then the price dropped into the 40,000s. And I thought, okay, I'll buy some more in the 40,000s. This might be the bottom. And then the largest single purchase I made of Bitcoin that I ever bought, the largest single purchase at one time, was when Bitcoin was $39,000 per coin. And of course, I thought that was as low as it was going to go. Or I didn't know, but I thought it was, a good price. But ultimately, Bitcoin went lower into the 30s and then into the 20s. And as it went into the 20,000s, I bought even more Bitcoin. And finally, it went below 20,000 and I bought even more Bitcoin. And I was buying it all the way down. Like, the cheaper it got and the longer it stayed down there and the more time I had to read books, study Bitcoin, and build my conviction, the more I would buy Bitcoin. And the percentage of my net worth that was allocated to Bitcoin went from maybe 10% to, coming off of 2017 and 2018. I'm just guessing. It was 5%, 10%. It was a low number. And I ratcheted up to 20%, and then to 30%, and then to 40%, and then to 50%, and then to 60%. And finally, I got up into, by the end of that bear market, once it had recovered, I bought all the way down, but then I also was buying on its way up as well, because at that point, my conviction on Bitcoin was so high that I was willing to buy on the way down and the way up. So I was buying when Bitcoin went back into the 20,000s and into the 30,000s and into the 40,000s. And I posted a lot of videos where I was buying Bitcoin in the 50,000s, the 60,000s, 70,000s, 80,000s, 90,000s, and 100,000s, including my most recent significant purchase, which was $109,000 Bitcoin. I bought $14,000 worth of $109,000 Bitcoin. And my most recent paycheck, where I bought $4,000 of $109,000 Bitcoin. So I've got major Bitcoin purchases at $109,000 and at $111,000, I think, off the top of my head. Anyway, short take is there's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin as long as you have the patience. As long as you have the patience and you can wait and you're not going to freak out when the price goes down. So I think 70% chance that very exciting times are ahead. All right, let's say more than 70% chance that very exciting times are ahead. Less than 30% chance that a brutal bear market is ahead of us because the world is just not quite ready for full Bitcoin adoption, which is fine. That doesn't mean it won't happen. I think it will happen. I think it's inevitable. But humans are slow to adopt things. They just are. Everybody forgets that Facebook is more than 20 years old. Everybody forgets that Microsoft is more than 40 years old. Like, it just takes time for humans to adopt things. And I think the world is ready for Bitcoin. I think that we're about to see a major wave of Bitcoin adoption. And I think that's all headed our way. And I think that would result in a very exciting period for the next 6 months, at least, maybe 5 months, whatever it is. But I also acknowledge that, hey, the world moves slowly. Adoption of all technologies moves slowly. And maybe the world just doesn't quite have the demand right now to sustain the price above $100,000. And we're going to have to see a price correction before the demand is there to sustain the price above $100,000 for the long term. I don't know. Again, I give that probability scenario a less than 30% chance. I like the chances a lot better above a 70% chances that we have an exciting bull up market ahead of us. But again, we just don't know. We don't know which comes first. So I will do a separate video about why one would be more likely to happen than the other. And I'll try to do that video next. Thanks, everyone.